Hi again, we're here for Operation 4 of the opening of the key that we started on February 1st for a client known as Jay, to preserve their anonymity. Anonymousness? Anonymity is the word I want, but I can't. Anywho, so again, we'll start as we always do. The fourth operation is also astrological, but this time based on the 36 so-called decanats or decans of the zodiac. The 12 signs have 3 subdegrees of 10, or groups of 10 subdegrees each. And each of those has a certain connotation, but this is supposed to represent all of them. So this is definitely the longest of all of them. We don't have to read 12 piles, or the tops of 12 piles, but we still have 36 cards that we have to weed through. So it's the most complicated of all of them and the most detail-oriented. So we'll see what happens. This is supposed to be the penultimate aspect of the situation. And so when you, in other words, basically when you start to see these things happen, you can realize that we're at the end of this phase of the situation. Okay. All right. So your significator is again going to be the Knight of Discs, and we're going to invoke and shuffle as always. I invoke thee, O that thou wilt send Heru, the great angel, who art set over the operations of this secret wisdom, that he may lay his hand invisibly upon these consecrated cards of art, and that thereby we may obtain true knowledge of hidden things to the glory of thine ineffable name. Amen. Okay. And we are asking for the fourth operation of Jay's opening of the key. That was begun on February 1st, 2011. Asking for the penultimate aspect of the situation. Okay, one more shuffle. Okay, so now I forget whether or not I'm supposed to cut for this one. So we'll ask Mr. Crowley what he says. And he tells us that for the fourth operation, shuffle, etc., and cut. Okay, so we are going to cut arbitrarily into 3 piles. Then we have to find the significator. Okay. And they're right on the bottom. So we are supposed to take you out and set you in the center of the table. And then basically the 30 cards that follow you, how does this work? Basically, we conceptualize the deck as a circle. So here you are, you're at the end of it, and then we're going to go right back onto the top. Because technically what you do is, if I found this in the middle, then I would take everything that follows you and put it on top. But since you're all the way in the bottom, we're just going to draw from the top and see what you get. And of course we're looking for the top 36. Okay, so that somehow my table is going to have room for this. All right. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. And then the deck goes in the middle. Okay, a lot of cards, clearly. So, unfortunately, I can't pick them up and show them to you, or otherwise I might mess up the order, and that's the last thing you want to do with this spread. I'll just tuck the Ten of Swords under there. Okay, so we have a complete circle of 36 cards, beginning with the Knight of Swords and ending with the Ten of Swords. So we begin at the Ascendant, represented by the, or the horizon line, represented by the Knight of Swords here. And he's surrounded by the Hermit and the Ten of Discs. Okay. Well, all this arguing that we've been seeing in the second and third operations, all the difficulties that may come from this, or the frustrations, pertaining mostly to your personal life, but also to your sense of self, and I think your career in general. I think you're going to eventually, well, either you or he are going to take a break from the situation. It's sort of like if it continues, if all the destructive aspect if all the fighting aspect continues, it's going to eventually break. And so, of course, this is not what you want to hear, I understand. But the other thing is that this does not necessarily have to happen. That by knowing this information, you can conceivably prevent it. But there is this idea of either, you know, I want to say that it's connected to that, but it can also represent you eventually, you know, leaving your job. It can represent that as well because of the nature of the Hermit being based on practical things, and the nature of the Knight of Swords, who tends to also be grounded in material things. So it can also represent, you know, you might just get fed up and decide to leave eventually said job. Counting, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, and the Knight is looking towards his left, so we're going to go that way. 2, 3, 4. And then we hit the Five of Wands again. The Five of Wands is joined with the Eight of Cups and the Knight of Wands. So this tells me that, well, what do I want to say about that? That's an interesting combination. The 5 denotes, again, that idea of competition and kind of back and forth, not necessarily arguing in a bad way. I think that's the thing with the Five of Swords. The reason the Five of Swords was more about arguing in the fourth operation was, in the third operation, was because it was coupled with the Seven of Wands, which has a more aggressive nature. The Five of Wands is aggressive, but in a way that's more just to stir up competition and to motivate people to do better. It's not necessarily like a hateful argument or anything like that. But there is a tension to the Five of Wands that is joined with the sense of general ennui and a desire to get moving in a new direction. I think it sort of talks about the idea of after having left either, or after someone having left, but I sort of want to say that it's career-based. After you leave said job, there might be some difficulties in terms of, even, well, I think abandoning previous pleasures. In the first operation, we talked a little bit about how, you like to, or perhaps part of you likes to spend money on nice things, or you like to have financial independence so that you can indulge a little bit. And it's suggesting that you might have to leave some of that behind in order to pursue something different. If we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the Four of Wands with the Four of Cups and the Three of Wands. Again, fire and water. Just everything feels kind of blah at this point. And a lot of these dull cards to some extent, meaning that after this it might feel like a real slow period for you. I think it says that you're going to feel ultimately, though, that you made the right decision, that you acted from a place that was right. But it might leave you kind of bored, either because you won't know what to do with yourself, or just it was a way, on the other hand, it could have just been, you could just see it as a way of having dealt with the ennui and boredom that you've been feeling throughout this reading, in which case that might leave you, actually, to some extent, or be diminished. 3, 4. The Ten of Wands with Death and the Princess of Discs. Well, this is another mild triad. There isn't anything particularly strong, but there's a sense of limitation to the situation here. Either I think there's this idea of, again, letting go of an older life, and having to readapt and having to refit yourself in a new situation that might not have many options in front of you. Yeah, I think that's what that is getting at there. Because the Ten of Wands in general is the Lord of Oppression, and so it has this very limited viewpoint and limited capacity. It's essentially putting the kibosh on someone's freedom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now we come to the Nine of Discs, which I was just talking about. And we have with it the Star and the Nine of Wands. Okay. I think that you're going to actually be able to make it work financially. That the financial end, although difficult and certainly not easy, not easy and needing readjustment and adaptation, I think you'll be able to make it work. But in general, you're going to want to keep your eye on the future and the long term. It may even have to do with trying to learn a new skill set in order to get yourself in a different field, of work, that is. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then we have the Fool with the Nine of Cups and the Hanged Man. This is interesting, I think. The Fool speaks to, well, in this case, it's interesting. Kind of senseless pleasure that is really, again, restricting. There are all these restrictions, but in this case, I think it's one that comes from a different a different quarter as opposed to just general circumstance. This is more, I think, your uncertainty about where you are in this point of the situation is certainly going to be, again, restricting, but there's this odd concept of happiness that's brought with it. And maybe this is just getting back to the idea that, perhaps this will open up some free time for you and you might be able to invest it in domestic things, or again, in your relationship, maybe trying to patch up some of those little wounds that happened in the previous two operations, whatever arguing that you've gone through at this point, or whatever other personal frustrations. So on one hand, you might feel very happy about the situation, but you will also feel very, very limited in your ability to act, really. But I don't think you're going to let that bother you so much. The Fool is kind of oblivious. 2, 3. Again, we hit the Moon. The Moon has come up many times in your OOTK. So this is definitely something to watch out for. The Moon here is very strong. It's not quite so bad as it has been. I think it's more... In this case, I sort of see it less oppressively as it has been in the previous ones. I think in the previous operations, the Moon has represented, again, that sense of like trying to avoid the inevitable and not being sure of where it's going to play out or how. And so it feels darker and more confusing and anxious than it really is. And in this case, it's more like this sense of, you're not going to really know where you're going in life, but you're going to be happier for it, to some extent. I think the Moon is not quite as harsh here. And it might give you some freedom to not necessarily act, but to think about things and maybe to develop some self-understanding. And it might be a time for you to develop plans about where you want to go, particularly moving. I know that's something that keeps coming up in this, but getting to a different location may be something that you start to think about, albeit hesitantly. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The Eight of Cups. With it, the... Oh, Goofy. I didn't know he was still on the bed. Goofy cat. We've got the Five of Wands again and the Two of Swords with the 8. This, again, I think, is talking about that moving business. I keep getting that sense of, like not wanting to be where you are anymore. Either wanting a change of pace or just feeling very much ready to move on. And I think that might become a source of another problem, particularly, again, with the significant other. I mean, just either, there's going to be some opposition to that and an inability, again, to work together and compromise. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The Death card with the Princess of Cups and the Ten of Wands. So this means that some things are going to have to be let go of, particularly in the realm of your pleasures, because you're going to see them as too oppressive. Again, I mean, this whole reading has really circulated on the big question of whether or not you are really happy in the relationship that you're in, or whether or not it's really what is good for you. Because there are a lot of aspects of it that I see, I mean, just as a third party, I see them as restricting and confining. And I'm not sure if you see them the same way, or if they really are. Maybe I'm just reading it all wrong, but I keep seeing all these signs and patterns of, especially the Princess of Cups, she keeps coming back too, as representing your kind of childlike trust in this relationship and the happiness you derive from it. And it could also be the exact opposite of what I just said, in that it might be that you let go of your own self, that you let that ambition to leave and to try something new go, that you allow yourself to be dominated by the other in this situation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Then we get Fortune, the Wheel of Fortune, with the Sun and the Five of Swords. That's an interesting triad. And so, again, we get this sense of, good luck coming your way to sort of spice things up. And it could be, I'm not sure what the Five of Swords is trying to say. That's really weird. It's sort of like mixed luck, I think. It's the idea that something is going to happen, perhaps unexpectedly, that really is kind of a mixed bag, in the sense that there's a good aspect to it, in that it's sort of what you need in this situation. And on the other hand, it's sort of bad, because there's a cruel aspect of it too. It's really ambiguous, I realize, but it is strong. I mean, it does say that something might just. I almost want to say something is going to change this situation back in your favor. But it might not necessarily, it might have some negative aspects of it as well. Mixed fortune. It's a very interesting combination of cards we have there. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then we have the Chariot finally. But the Chariot coming back again from your first operation, but repeated here. And again, oh gosh. Yeah, I think the Chariot it should be positively aspected because it's surrounded by water. I want to say, in this case, it might be the Chariot overcoming the ick that's surrounding it, because you've got the Seven of Cups and the Moon next to it. And the Seven of Cups has come up again many times in your reading, denoting lethargy. And sinking in kind of false pleasures, and the Moon also, again, as I said before, and so the Moon is back to this sort of meaning the same thing as the Seven of Cups, in that it's elusive. And I think what we're getting at is that whatever this random change that's going to happen, or seemingly random change that's going to be put in your lap, by the Wheel of Fortune, that again is sort of a mixed bag of good and bad, might finally be the motivation or the kick in the pants to get you to actually do something about all of this, and to finally overcome this sense of doubt and fear of movement. Because eventually you need to go. This whole reading has been about getting you to move, and so that's partially why there have been some negative jumps in this, or negative aspects of this whole operation, whole opening of the key for you, because the universe is very much trying to jar you back into reality and jar you into a state of action, and sometimes the way the universe chooses to do that is not necessarily pretty. But from here we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And we hit the Two of Swords with the Three of Wands and the Eight of Cups. So again, there's this opposition getting thrown up at you. Not thrown up as in, well, you know what I mean. Getting thrown against you, like a block. And again, it's an impasse. It's like finally you've gotten the required motivation to overcome your personal doubts and fears and to finally, get going somewhere. And, someone puts up, puts up the stop sign, so to speak. And it's almost because they don't think it's a good idea. Or something like that, because there's, the Three of Wands negatively aspected. It's sort of, they see it as, something that needs to be thought about more, or something like that. 1, 2. Then we get the Three of Wands, which is positively aspected with the Four of Wands and the Two of Swords. And so it's kind of like you may actually go ahead with it anyway, despite whatever impasses from others you encounter. It's sort of like you may plant the seeds for that to eventually happen anyway. This being, moving or something, or getting yourself out of the situation you're in, going into a new location or a new field, because the Three of Wands definitely is the idea that that's a good thing for you. And coupled with the Four of Wands, it definitely has this very positive vibe to it, and definitely has this idea of getting something done, definitely acting on the opportunity. But then we have the Four of Cups, and the Four of Cups, I don't think we've had it before with the Four of Wands, but not in and of itself. Because of course we stop counting when we hit a card that we've already come to. So the Four of Cups in this case is also sort of not positive, not negatively aspected. It sort of just represents, like, at this point, it's sort of the idea of, it's like a lesser boredom. It's sort of this idea that things at this point, like you're not going to feel as satisfied about this decision as you should, I think. And I think it is partially because, this other person just keeps throwing up all these barriers, as to why you shouldn't or why you can't. And it's not exactly a healthy situation anymore. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we hit death again. And so again, we keep returning to that first card from the very beginning of the whole reading. The reading being Operation 1. Death was in your fire pile, and so that was what your main motivation was trying to be, was letting go and getting rid of the muck that's holding you back. And so we return to that. We finally get some sense of, recognizing that that's what you need to do. Okay, so now at 28 minutes, we have to pair. So we're supposed to pair from these two cards, I believe. I'm just going to double check Mr. Crowley, just in case. I'm pretty sure. Count and pair as before. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to pair them. I'm going to move the deck over here, and I'm going to pair them next to your significator. So we've got the Knight of Swords and the Ten of Swords. This is the idea of, so now we're returning to the beginning of the operation, the fourth operation. We're filling in with details. Excuse me. And so the Knight of Swords is, again, this idea of someone needing to take a break because of all the stress that they've been going through. And it could be you, tired of all of kind of, to be honest, the drama that you've been going through in the past 2 or 3 operations, all the struggle with yourself and others, and just needing to finally take a time out and reevaluate things. the Hermit and the Hierophant. You may, in that retreat, in that time off that you're going to take in this, it suggests that you might seek help somehow, or aid either from a paternal figure, either literally from your father or something like that. But you have two very paternal, very masculine cards paired together, and one is definitely about retreating from the world, the Hermit, but the Hierophant is about really asking for aid and guidance. It could also be turning to yourself for your own guidance for once, and trying to use that time off to figure things out for yourself. The Knight of Wands and the Eight of Wands. So very quickly and all of a sudden you're going to be jarred into action again by this sense of like an idea, I think. Either someone's going to drop an idea in your lap or an opportunity in your lap, and there's going to be this sudden revolutionary quality to it that is going to spark you into action, I think. The Five of Wands and the Seven of Discs. But the issue is that this is going to raise some concern with others, that there might be some issues with other people that you're going to have as a result of this, and so the plan may abort itself, basically. The Seven of Discs is the Lord of Failure. So again, this might be conflicts that you have with your partner, or other family members, or other people that are involved in this situation. They might not necessarily agree that this is right for you, and so it has a chance of not working out as a result. Or they just fail to be supportive again. The Eight of Cups and the Seven of Cups. So then we slip back into this, this is very interesting because they represent opposite things. The seven represents slipping into false pleasures, the other represents leaving it. And so we have this interesting dichotomy here. It sort of, I think, it's kind of confusing, honestly, to have them both paired with each other, but I think we could conceivably say that whatever doldrums that this puts you in, you're going to want out. You're going to want to get out of that situation, because it's too boring and heavy, and you want to do something. The Two of Swords and the Chariot. Again, this is putting up opposition to the sense of movement, and it could come from another person. Again, the Chariot, when we first read this operation, perhaps represented moving, a change of setting, a change of pace, going in a different direction. And the Two was talking about how someone else didn't necessarily agree with that. The Three of Wands and the Moon. Again, they might not think it's a good idea because it doesn't seem to have a certain outcome. They're going to tell you that it's too risky to maybe take hold of that opportunity that was presented to you by the Knight of Wands. The Four of Wands and the Nine of Cups. Again, these cancel each other out. So there's an interesting sense of almost fake security and fake happiness. I don't know. This is a very weird pairing too. And I'm not sure what I want to say about it, in all honesty. And it's so many cards. I forget how long this operation is. Feeling myself a little fried here. The four, neither of them are particularly positively aspected, and again, I think this is just this idea of kind of taking things for granted, kind of just letting them stay. This is saying to me, maintaining the status quo and not really taking issue with the fact that this other person is going to tell you you can't, or something like that. The Four of Cups and the Fool. Gosh. This might be, again, the same sort of thing, that by just accepting that as it is and not seeking to change it, that you might actually become sort of foolish by it. It could also represent the idea that because it will be not that great or not that exciting, and pretty boring, a situation without a clear sense of direction, without a clear job, you're definitely going to want to do almost anything and everything. It could be either one. I'm not quite sure what he's getting at. But then we have the Princess of Discs and the Hanged Man. This is the idea, I think, you're going to feel like you can't necessarily learn any new skills, that you have to stay in a field very similar to what you've been doing. And again, this sense of restriction. Another sense of restriction, the Ten of Wands and the Four of Discs. Gosh. Your material situation is going to definitely put the limits on what you can and cannot do in this situation. That financial security is definitely going to play into whether or not you can ultimately get your life going in a different direction, or moving again, as we were saying. Then we have Death and the Prince of Swords. This is interesting. It could, I could see it as perhaps letting go of some of your general indecision about the whole thing, because again, throughout this reading, all 4 operations so far, I keep seeing you make strides and then fall back, making strides and falling back, and you're in this endless cycle of thinking about the situation and not really knowing what to do about it. And the whole reading has basically been telling you it doesn't really matter specifically what you do, it just matters that you do something about it. And so death, I think in this case, is knocking you conscious a little bit and trying to wake you up and get you out of this period of just thinking about it and not doing. The Princess of Cups and the Sun. And I think with that death comes, again, this realization that, your actual level of happiness, as we talked about at the beginning of this operation, your actual level of happiness in this relationship or this situation is not as strong as you think it is. It's not as good. It's not all good. And it might be counterproductive to think that it is. Okay. The Three of Swords and the Wheel of Fortune. This is interesting because it seems, when you're at the bottom, you're going to be put back on top, I think. The Three of Swords is kind of saying that as depressing as all this is, you might enter kind of a bad state of depression as a result. Death, in whatever form it takes, likes to give that to us. And I think it's saying that as you start to make these realizations, you might get very much down in the dumps, but that fortune is on your side, and that's going to, again, what we were talking about the first time we counted through this reading, we said that fortune was going to pop up and give you a help, or give you some help, rather. Sort of give you a leg up on the situation and try to get you back on track. The Eight of Swords and the Five of Swords. But remember that fortune was both good and bad. It had sort of a weird double aspect to it. And I think perhaps the bad aspect of it is more, again, more of this, well, the 8 is another very restricting card. Between the 8 of Swords here, the 10 of Wands, the Lord of Oppression, and the Hanged Man that we kept coming to throughout this reading, there are all these symbols of restriction and feelings of I can't throughout this whole thing. The 7 of Swords in previous readings as well. The 2 of Swords. There are all these blocks that keep getting put up. And I think in this case, the 8, well, it's again this idea of just, gosh, maybe having, the 8 tends to represent having too much on one's plate and having too many obligations. And it may say that when this opportunity arises for you, you may feel that you have too many other things to deal with, and so you may not take it necessarily. But in the counting one, you sort of did take it. You definitely considered it. This is interesting. Maybe it's that the opportunity will be very limited, like the window of opportunity is going to be very small. Sort of like that first thing that we talked about with the Knight of Swords and the the Knight of Wands and the 8 of Wands, that sort of, opportunity arising and then immediately someone saying that it wasn't plausible because there wasn't a whole lot of chance of success in that. And maybe this is a very similar thing, that the situation is going to become very limited, and even though the Wheel of Fortune is going to give you a gift, so to speak, when you're down in the dumps, it might not have that much flexibility. Okay, let's try to wrap this on up here. The 4 of Swords and the 9 of Discs. I think this speaks to, again, that idea of compromise that we keep returning to, that in order to overcome these challenges, you need to put whatever issues you have with or you and your significant other both have to put whatever issues you have aside and work through it together. And it really cannot be a one-person show anymore, that you have to be heard in this situation, and you do have needs that need to be addressed, because as long as they aren't addressed, the situation is not necessarily going to improve. The 9 of Swords, the 9 of Discs and the 6 of Discs. So, provided you can overcome these challenges and stick to it, and perhaps take that opportunity, as difficult as it may seem or as narrow as it may seem, it will definitely help you financially. It will definitely help you get back on track. Whatever you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. And it might reboost you to a place of financial security. Sorry about that. So, again, that opportunity, if you take it and if you deal with whatever, if you're able to overcome whatever bad aspects come with it, it will definitely help you out financially. And the last aspect of this, the final result of the penultimate aspect of the situation, or Operation 4, is the Star and the 2 of Cups, love. This is very nice. So it actually ends fairly well, I think. Both of these are incredibly positive. And it ends much more solidly financially, and it ends a lot better emotionally, I think. I think part of this speaks to needing to almost have like a jump start with your relationship and almost start it over again. But it could also represent taking some of that energy that you've invested in that so much and directing it more towards your future and your ambitions and what you want to do. Your hope in the future might is going to be rekindled by this opportunity that's going to come at a bleak time. And I think it's the good thing about it is that it is going to finally free up some of this energy that you've got trapped in your relationship. And so you may, again, there's this desire to make you a little more independent, a little more self-activating. Okay? So it's basically where we end with the fourth operation. Remember, we have one more to go based on the Tree of Life. So I will see you there. Bye.